Hey y'all, this week on the podcast we are joined by Kevan Smith, a passionate outdoorsman and just also happens to play Major League Baseball as a catcher for the Angels. I always love to have people on here that come from different walks of life to tell their story, how they got where they are now, and what keeps them motivated. Kevan is a great guy that truly loves to hunt, and any person like that always makes for a good conversation. Lastly, I really hope you're enjoying this podcast. If you are, do us a big favor, head on over to our page on iTunes, give us a rating, and write us a review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
All like official in a room. I'm sitting in a bed here in a hotel.
Oh man, it's all good. To tell you how official I am, I'm on my backyard porch, and then this is a glass sliding door right here.
Okay.
And I originally had my lab Knox inside, and I had this thing like tilted down where you can see there, and he was just kind of sitting there staring at me. So now he's right here, like directly below me. I'd pick him up, but he also just jumped in the pond, so he's wet, so he can stay down there.
Yeah, I just saw him tackle. What was that? A turkey decoy or something? That was pretty warm right there.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool, man. We can get going with this podcast episode. So I can formally introduce you. This is Kevan Smith, most famously known for a peacock bass aquarium that he had at one point.
Isn't that funny? That becomes the first thing we talk about.
I wasn't lying, but look, I got to set this up. So me and Kevin, we're talking back and forth about doing this podcast episode. And then he says he's watching a show about aquariums, and then he just throws it. He's like, "Yeah, I used to have a peacock bass tank." I'm like, "Wait, what?" What?
Yeah, that thing. That was quite an experience. It became an obsession. I grew up fishing the Clarion River out of my kayaks, and I got the great idea to get like a 50, 60-gallon tank and try to start keeping fish. And then before I left, when I got drafted by the White Sox, I decided to get some peacock bass for my last year in college, and not knowing what those things can grow into. I only had a 100-gallon tank at the time, but I put the responsibility on my dad to take care of them for a few months, and when I came back, they were monsters. So then that tank turned into a 250-gallon tank, and then those bass turned into 24 inchers, and it got a little excessive. Obsessive. I mean, just so time consuming, but I mean, an awesome experience. And then I realized since I was gone for about 8 months out of the year, I just couldn't put that responsibility on my dad. So sold the tank, bought my wife now her engagement ring, and just waiting for the day until I can get back into the hobby. So.
What a win-win. Yeah, dude, I wasn't like when you brought that up. I was like, all right, I got to hear the story on that because not everyone has a peacock bass aquarium.
And my wife would kill me if I didn't tell this story because she tells everybody it. But that picture I sent you, so I had two peacock bass and I had a alligator gar, and he grew probably to about 28 inches.
Yeah.
And the hard part was trying to feed him with how aggressive the bass were. So I would kind of hand feed him little pieces of shrimp. Well, the bass got mad at me one day because I wasn't feeding them, and they actually went after the gar, and the gar decided to do just a rocket launch through the top of the tank and just like smashed his face off the top. I mean, I've had this fish for 3 years now. So you can imagine, I mean, it was emotional, but it was tough to see him struggle. Like he obviously, did something to his swim bladder or severed something in his spinal column, but I put him in this ICU. I called it the GAR ICU. It was like a Tupperware filled with about 3 or 4 inches of water, so he didn't have to worry about leveling off or anything. And I put him in this little like crate with support system and area like air bubblers and things like that. And I probably had that for 3 or 4 days to see if he could recover, but he ended up not making it. I had to euthanize him. So, but it was a bummer, and obviously the ups and downs of a fish tank. But I always had live cameras on my tanks, and everybody thought I was a weirdo. until this year I get moved over to the Angels, and I'm getting to know the guys, and one of my teammates, Justin Bohr, we start talking about fish, and he goes, dude, check this out. And I go over, and he has a live camera on his fish tank back home. And I'm like, I knew it. I'm not the only weird guy doing this kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Probably like that scene out of Step Brothers. Like, did we just become best friends?
Did we just become best friends? Seriously, 100%. But I was more freshwater. He's saltwater. So opposites attract. So we can kind of collaborate on what we want to do for the future.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Yeah, so we can, like I said, I had to at least mention that because I was like, that's the most interesting thing I've definitely heard all day. So, but you kind of, with some of the stuff you said, you kind of alluded to what you do, but let's kind of get a quick background on you and where you're at now.
Yeah, so my ride has been kind of crazy. I grew up obviously loving the outdoors and played baseball, played football, and just kind of went out and had fun with it, did my thing, and ended up going to college on a football scholarship. Played football for a couple years at Pitt, but always knew I had baseball in my back pocket, and ended up switching over to baseball my last couple years. Got drafted by the White Sox, and then got drafted in 11. So this will be my 9th year in professional baseball, and this past off season got picked up by the Angels. So I've been out here in California playing this past season. It's been awesome. So it's been a heck of a ride. I try to hang on this roller coaster as long as I can, but we'll see where it takes me and see what else I have in my future. So
yeah, for sure. Well, this is something I gotta ask. I had Corey Cunningham who plays for the Arizona Cardinals, and I kind of asked him a similar question. So like, I gotta think, or not think, I know there's I don't know how many kids there would be that play sports growing up and they just have these aspirations of playing for the big leagues one day. Like what did it feel like? Like you're sitting, you're just, just like a regular guy, and then all of a sudden, you're playing for. I mean, you're playing for the big leagues, literally. Like, right. What was that like?
It was pretty amazing. I remember I was in Toledo, Ohio, in AAA when I got the call to go up, and I mean, making that call to my dad and my parents and my wife and just a bunch of family members was pretty emotional because the ride through the minor leagues is not easy. It's tough. You're making pennies just trying to survive with that carrot being dangled in front of your face of playing in the big league. So when the day finally happens and all the work gets paid off, it's amazing. It's honestly hard to put into words, but I tell everybody, it's hard to get to the big leagues, but it's even harder to stick in the big leagues. You know? It's just a constant, all right, I just want to get a hit in the big leagues. I just want to hit a homer in the big leagues. I just want to catch a winner. I just want to, but then it just keeps going. It's like, I just want to do this now. I just want to make this. I want to do that. And it's just finding that level of being content with where you are, but still working hard and, just trusting God's plan for you and understanding what the process is and just kind of keeping things in perspective. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You've got to have, I think during the fall, I feel like, man, I have a pretty, hectic schedule, with the filming, the video stuff that we do. But then I'll talk to a guy like you. I'm like, that guy has a crazy schedule. You have to go a lot.
Yeah, it's tough. You're kind of used to it at this point, but it wears you down. I mean, we head out for spring training, usually the end of January, beginning of February. So you have spring training for over 2 months. And then that's not even the season. So then the season starts end of March, early April, and we play 6 months every day with maybe 3 or 4 days off a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you make playoffs into October, you might not get done till the end of October. So it's a long season. It's a lot of games, and it's definitely mentally and physically exhausting. But it's a heck of a ride. It's something I'll obviously never regret. been a crazy experience thus far, but you learn to adapt, you learn to figure it out, and how to have a family, and just apply it to the special situation that you've been put into. So
Right. Yeah. Good for you, man. So, how did you get started in hunting? That's something you started with at an early age.
hmm yeah, it was funny. I was listening to a couple of your podcasts here, just listening to like Stephen Ranella and Mr. Shockey talk about it's just in our blood. It's in our DNA, and I think I for sure fell into that category. I can't remember a specific time, but I remember being 5 years old, waiting for my dad to come home from deer camp to see if there was a little shanker buck sitting in the back of the bed, packed with all the clothes and everything, just to see if he got something. I remember not being able to sleep as a kid, even though I couldn't even hunt until I was 12. I remember it was almost an obsessed, mindset. I mean, my uncle lives up in the Allegheny National Forest, way up in north central Pennsylvania. So I always loved going up there, getting into the outdoors. And I mean, I remember not being able to sleep the night before opening day of Pennsylvania rifle season. So
Yeah.
it was just something that stuck with me my whole life, and just something I truly have a passion about, and for sure near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, you hear someone talk about hunting the way you just did.
Right.
Anyone that is kind of like what you were relating to with hearing Ranella and Shockey talk about it, who I've had on here before.
Right.
Yeah, someone that appreciates hunting, they hear you talk about that, and they automatically know what you're talking about. They're like, yeah, I know the obsession you mean.
100%. And I mean, even I was feeling for you guys whenever I think it was Joe Rogan who said he was like a one and done turkey hunter, and it just broke my heart, because I was like, man, he has no idea what turkey. I mean, that was one of my favorite things to do, but obviously when I started getting big into sports with baseball and football, my turkey hunting was limited big time. Like the last time I went spring turkey hunting was probably back in high school, like 15 years ago. And to hear, somebody say that, it's like, man, you have no idea, but it's so hard, whenever you've done something so passionately for your whole life, to expect somebody to have that same feeling over one hunt. Is tough to get. So that's the trick, getting new people involved, trying to have them understand your passion and where it came from, and sympathize with the fact that they haven't been doing it for 30 years. So
No, it's interesting to me, take a guy, I mean, which Joe's say he's a pretty well-known individual, being an understatement, but there's there's more and more people that are getting introduced to hunting at a later age, and it's interesting to see. Some of them you kind of introduce them to it, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, whatever, but then you have some, it's like they had it in them the whole time, they just didn't know it. You show it to them, they just are just overtaken with the whole thing.
Exactly, man. Like my really good buddy that I came up through the minors with, he unfortunately passed away a few years ago in a UTV accident, but he was that exact way. I always asked him, was it in the family? How'd you get into this? And he was like, no, I was just for some reason, it was always something that was interesting to me. I think he had a friend maybe take him out, and it just overtook his life. I mean, it was pretty cool to see. And when I hear Ranella and those guys, like I said earlier, talk about it, it's in our genes, it's in our DNA, it's deep down in us that we want to go out and harvest animals and provide for our families, and have that I don't know what you would call it, but that ingrained in us to go out and do it. And it's awesome. It's not about just killing things, it's about the experience. Obviously, I mean, I know it's cliche and all, but that's what it's about, and getting with good friends and family and just good people and having a good time about it. I mean,
Sure.
I hunted Pennsylvania for 20 years of my life, and I've shot 3 bucks. So if it was only about, killing an animal, I probably wouldn't be doing it. So that just tells you right there, it's there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. Well, then there's a couple different ways you could look at that. Like there's which again, I've never told you this story, but I've told this story on the podcast before. Like for one, like my family, they hunted, but no one really took it as far as I did. As far as like my dad was more of a
Yep, I can feel you on that one.
my dad was it still is. He's a big fisherman. That's kind of where where the name Lake came from, was his obsession with bass fishing. And but he deer hunted some, and but then turkey hunting is what like was the whole spiral down. Like soon as when I got into turkey hunting, that was like snowball effect for every other type of hunting. I was like, all right, I got into everything. And yeah, and then with like on the offset, like my mom killed her first deer 2 years ago.
Wow, it took her that long?
Which she
like
never
to get into it, right?
Yeah,
like
well,
actually
it was when I started working at Primos. I mean, I always hunted.
Right.
I started working at Primos, and then we started doing this podcast, and she started listening to the podcast because she loved, she's a supportive mother, and
Right, yeah,
she was listening, and she said, she's like, I want to go hunting, and she said, the way that she was raised, in her family, and back then, she said, just honestly how it was, like the girls didn't go hunting. She's like, my dad always went and stuff like that, but I never went, and so we went, and she shot a deer, and like it's you hear it a lot, so it starts to sound cliche, but that whole deal about providing meat, that's a real thing, man. Because when she killed that deer, and then we got some meat back from it, I remember she texted me a picture. Her and Dad were eating it at home, and I was like, how does it feel, to be eating something that you killed yourself, that you provided yourself? It feels amazing. I mean, it really is. If you've never done it, you can't fully understand it. But I mean, it's a different feeling for sure.
100%. And I mean, I can definitely relate with you there, because I only have 4 months in the off season. So when I go out and, get a couple deer, if I shoot an elk, I have all this meat on my hands, and I'm obviously not home for 8 months out of the year. So when I get to dish it out to my, my sister and her family and my parents, and even like my wife's grandma and stuff, and for them to shoot me a text or call and say, hey, I used that ground meat, hey, I used that roast or whatever. I mean, it's such a rewarding feeling, knowing that I'm able to provide and able to supply such high quality meat, not having to go to the grocery store. I mean, that's just a really cool feeling, obviously very rewarding. So
I couldn't agree more. How did you get into bow hunting? How'd you start into doing that?
So bow hunting, I was fortunate. One of my good buddies growing up, his family was right next to a big chunk of land. So we were both big time hunters, and he had a little PSE bow when we were like 12, 13 years old, and we just would always, be shooting this thing in the backyard. We'd be climbing up tree stands, doing the fake rattling thing, saying, here comes the big 10 point. You going to take them or not? Like the hunting shows, we were dying, every Saturday morning. We couldn't wait to wake up and, watch Paul Jordan and Waddell and Blanton and all those guys get on there. And we just had a blast. And I mean, my mom would always get mad at me because he had guns over there, right? And she was like, I don't want you guys getting into those guns. So we tried not to mess with them. So we kind of took to a bow, and it just kind of took off. I remember my dad bought me my first PSE when I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. And I think it took me a couple years to kill my first deer. I always made sure I had a good, ethical, clean shot. And it actually was on the ground. I couldn't believe it. I was standing on the ground, and this PA buck came walking through, grunted to him, and he probably walked in within 20 feet of me, and I was hooked immediately. I mean, it was awesome. So, but the problem with baseball is I don't get home until mid-October to late October. Obviously don't get to experience the elk hunting out west in September. And it's just tough. I really don't have much time to scout. I don't know where the deer are. I'm hunting, public land in Pennsylvania where big time pressure, and I struggle with shooting, lower age class deer. I always look for mature deer, regardless of the size of the antlers, and that's something tough to do in Pennsylvania. On top of spending time with your family, having, holidays, and we just had our first hunt about a year ago, so obviously want to spend as much time with him. And I go out west. I go out west every year for a couple weeks, so when I heard you talk about like the snowball effect with turkey hunting, my snowball effect was going out west to hunt. I played rookie ball in Great Falls, Montana, and my whole family out there were huge hunters, and they invited me out the next year, and I've been going ever since. So that's just opened my eyes beyond anything I could imagine hunting out there. So anybody listening, I for sure recommend going out west, because if you're used to eastern, northeastern hunting, and seeing a deer a day is something that you call success, I mean, going out there and seeing, hundreds at a time, or it's just it's a totally different way of hunting, which I became very obsessed with it quickly. So
I understand, man. Until I started working for Primos, the only traveling I had done for hunting was I had some really good friends that had some land in Illinois. I'd gone up there with them like once or twice. So the first time, like how I got started at Primos happened kind of abruptly, and then next thing I know, I'm going from being a college kid at Starkville, Mississippi State's campus, to filming Brad elk hunting in New Mexico, and I'm just I'm like, what is all this? And
right, like, what is this world? Like, what is this out here? Right? I mean, it was something you only saw on TV, and then I think in my mind for forever was, unless I can somehow save up $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, I'm never going to be able to do this. And now that I've gone out there and see the amounts of public land, the access, and what amazing things our hunting dollars have gone towards to preserve the land and make these animals available is just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I tell people that all the time. I tell everyone, if you're a bow hunter, or if you're a hunter at all, like you said, you owe it to yourself, just to go out west and see out there, just because it's such a different world. I tell that applies to everywhere, northeast, southeast, wherever. It's good to, if you can, travel around and see different parts of the country and hunt out there. But out west is so special in how it is, and even if, to what you're saying about public lands, there's still a good many people out there that just seem like they're intimidated to go try it. And I'm like, look, you're not gonna. I promise you, if you go out there, you're not gonna regret that you did it.
100%. And even my dad was the same. 50 years hunted Pennsylvania, and I got him out there, and he still talks to this day about just the landscapes. And I mean, his favorite thing was like pheasant hunting. Like we went out there, and I mean, we were kicking up roosters every 50 to 100 yards. I mean, it was just eye-opening to him. I mean, and it was just something that's what he took from it. Aside from the landscape, aside from the animals that he saw, I mean, it was just an amazing experience for him, and I'm grateful that I was able to get him out there. But I even encourage people, don't be scared to knock on doors. Don't be scared to go up to these ranchers and just ask. I got to know a guy 2 years ago who owns a huge ranch in central Montana for elk. And when I got to talking with him, he's like, it's crazy to hear the people that don't want to come up and ask for permission. He said, I'll get so bored some days, I'll actually go down to the road, find a truck full of hunters, and ask what they're doing. And they're like, oh, we're just going to the back to the public land to hunt. And he'll say, what do you guys want to hunt, some elk? I got a spot right up the road. And they're like, yeah, sure. So he literally hops in the truck, and he pulls up to his ranch and opens the big gate. And they're like, sir, are you sure we can do this? Are you sure this is legal? I mean, this looks pretty private. And he goes, yeah, don't worry about it. I know the guy. And he takes them up through his beautiful ranch, and they go elk hunting. There's so many people out there that are just, they love hunting just as much as you. And and don't be scared to go up and talk to them and just BS with them and just, show your personality, show your love for the outdoors, show your love for the respect for the land, and you'd probably be shocked how many landowners would let you on.
Yeah. And you'll never find that out if you don't go out there and try it,
Right.
Yeah.
The worst thing they're going to say is no, which should never discourage you. Just on to the next.
Yeah. And even like, I mean, I have friends that went out there and tried their luck with elk or mule deer on public land and maybe not killed anything, but man, you hear them talk about that trip and you're like, did you regret going out there? They're like, no. I mean, you don't, even if you don't, I mean, obviously, if you shoot an elk, that's what you want, but it's not like it's just like, well, that was the worst. I'm never trying that again. Usually they're planning how quickly they can get back out there.
100%. And I mean, every year, like one of my biggest strategies is just find little rinky-dink bar in town, and sit down and have a couple beers, get a burger. And I mean, it's crazy the amount of ranchers that come in and you hear them talking about, the antelope they saw or the big buck they saw or, whatever may be going around. And then you just got to be personable, introduce yourself, get to talking a little bit. And it's crazy the doors that'll open. It's just, don't go out there and be a hermit crab and don't talk to anybody. Every year, try to meet someone new. Try to meet someone at a sporting goods store. Talk to the archery shop or talk to those guys. I mean, they're going to be able to tell you good places to go, where you can at least start. And every year you go out there, it's just going to get better and better. So
yeah,
the Primos surround view blind. I feel like in the world we live in now, the word game changer gets overused, but I feel absolutely confident in saying that this blind is an absolute game changer. It's changed the way that we hunt 100%. And now at Primos.com, you can get $50 off 360 and 270 surround views. You don't want to miss this deal. Head on over to Primos.com now and check it out.
Yeah. I mean, I really like that you brought that up because that's not something that gets talked about enough. I don't feel like it's just
because nobody wants to give up their secret spots. So it's like,
yeah.
So I get that side of it, but I mean, when you see the amount of public land out there and the abundance of wildlife, I mean, it is just it's amazing. So
yeah. So what he's saying is, guys, is after this episode is over, Kevin's gonna drop a pin on that spot where all those pheasants were. And then
I could probably drop a pin on these places I go, and we would never see each other, even if we tried. That's kind of how it works out there. So
yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's comical to hear the locals out there talk about, like, dude, you can't get too much of the landscape in the background of your pictures because then everyone will know exactly where you're at. And I'm like, you see this place? It is like, how would anybody have any idea what that little hill behind me would be? Like, it's just, I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I mean, geez, if I took a picture of a deer in Pennsylvania, there wouldn't be one person in that whole state that have any idea where I am. But
yeah,
it's just a totally different way of thinking and living, and it just kind of cracks me up how different it is, but in a good way.
Yeah, I understand, man. Maybe some of those locals around there could pick some of that stuff out. I promise you, I wouldn't know.
Oh,
right.
Like,
he's
exactly.
in Montana. That's as close as I can get.
Well, I think, like, I love seeing the landscapes and I love getting great background shots, but, it's kind of funny to hear a different perspective on what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? You're telling everybody where you are. If they want to go out and shoot a deer, more the merrier. Like, let's go.
Yeah, no, I've heard it on both sides of the spectrum. I've been around people that have the more, I guess, generous would be the word, leans toward, and then you come around like turkey hunters in Mississippi. Like it's a don't ask, don't tell situation.
100%.
Don't ask me no questions. I won't tell you any lies. That's how it's a pretty tight-lipped around that time of year. But there's a balance to it, I guess. But,
yeah. 100% balance.
Yeah, ain't no doubt, man. So like you ever going back to like baseball questions here, like how often? I mean, because I'm trying to like piece together because like I know when we're traveling, like especially during like elk season, we'll be gone away for like a long period of time.
Right.
Like I know you're like, do you get breaks in between where you get to go back home, or are you just like gone for like a long time?
Basically gone for 8 months. That's the hard part about what we do. A lot of people don't realize it. They think you go home and you get to spend time with your family and everybody, but I mean, really, the off season is 3 to 4 months. And we're traveling every 3 to 4 days. We're hopping on a plane. I mean, obviously in the minors, you're in the bus league, so you're hopping on a bus, driving through the night, trying to get to that game the next day. And it can get exhausting, but the ways that I was able to get home is, I'm from Pennsylvania, obviously, but I play in LA now. We played Cleveland a couple weeks ago, and we ironically had an off day before the series, so I was able to actually get to Cleveland, rent a car, drive home for my son's first birthday. So that was
Awesome.
like the one example of being able to get home, but it's only for 24 hours,
Yeah.
and it was right after the trade deadline. So for all I know, we could have this all planned, have my son's first birthday planned, everything lined up, and then I get traded to where I
Yeah.
don't have an off day that day, and then it's like, plans explode. So this game, I mean, it's so unpredictable. You never know what could happen. I mean, I could walk into the office today and they tell me I'm released, and you may not pick up a job anywhere. I mean, it's very unstable. It's like I said, very unpredictable. But there's a lot of great things to it. I mean, I always I always joke with my wife, we want to write a book and call it "So You Want to Play Professional Baseball?" question mark. I
Uh,
mean, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but there are some serious adversity tests that you hit. So
yeah, dude. Look, man. There's the older I get, the more I realize there's going to be pros and cons to everything.
mhm.
There's not going to be any point that you get to in life where you're just set it on cruise control and just
Right,
everything just stays perfect.
the
I've
grass is
always,
never greener.
yeah, yeah. I've always wondered, man, like, cause especially like talking to you, like how, like I can't imagine, like you show up and like, oh, you got traded to wherever, and then you just got to pick up and move, right? You
No,
just,
I mean it. So I'm a catcher. The guy I was catching with all season, Jonathan Lucroy, he literally just got. Um, it's called designated, but in layman's terms, basically got released and then picked up by the Cubs a couple days later, and now he's on a playoff contending team with, and he was just sitting at home a few days ago. So it's a crazy ride. I've seen so many guys go through so many, ups and downs. Like one of my good buddies, he was in AAA with Cleveland, just took his release, and now he's looking to go play overseas. I mean, there's just so many different paths. You can go to Mexico, you can go to the Dominican, you can go to Korea, you can go to Japan. There's just so many different routes you can go, and I mean, the main goal is to get to the big leagues and play on that big stage. So. Um, Guys will do whatever it takes. They'll put their bodies through whatever it takes. I mean, I'm sitting at 8+ surgeries now. It's just one of those things that we love, and we'll do anything to do it. So
yeah, I understand, man. Like I think what you're talking about, man, like you could write about some of that stuff you just mentioned. If you ever write that book, you could put some of that stuff in there because it's
oh,
just it's stuff that nobody understands, man. That everyone just sees the I guess the allure of being in the big leagues. You don't know about all the other stuff that goes into it.
dude, 100%. And I mean, I tell parents and I tell kids, I'm literally playing with the best player probably to ever live, Mike Trout, right now.
Right.
And I mean, he wasn't created, in a lab. He just had it. He naturally had it. We all just have that God-given ability. Yeah, it's developed and it's developed through hard work and the right instructors and whatnot. But I see so many kids just getting pounded these days with forcing them to do things. Parents thinking they can create their kid in the cage and get this scholarship and whatnot. And it's like you almost start taking the fun out of things for him, and not focusing on the experience and not focusing on the friendships that he's going to build. And there's just so many lessons that can be learned through just the game and through meeting new people and just letting things happen as they're supposed to. You know what I mean? I joke a lot. I was on a hunting show this past fall. That was my childhood dream. Like I said earlier, like waking up, watching these hunting shows, I'm like, man, if I could only be on a hunting show one day, that would be so cool. And like watching that, I had more, just excitement, and it was so thrilling to me to just see my face on a hunting show. But then you look at like a young kid who's says I want to be a Major League Baseball player, and it's like, yeah, it's just totally opposite of how my mind worked. I mean, hunting was my thing, but I just let baseball happen. I did it. I played it. I was blessed with the ability to do what I do, and I worked my butt off for it. And I got here. I'm playing. I'm sticking. And it's just like I never allowed myself to become obsessed with it to where it controlled my life.
Right.
There were a lot of guys that I played with and a lot of people that I saw that it just overtook their life. It was all they thought about. They couldn't sleep at night. And I get that side of it, but as soon as that happens, that's whenever the pressure and, all of that heat comes down on you. And it's like, if I don't become a big league baseball player, my life's over.
Right.
That's not the case at all. I see a bunch of guys. They're doing great. They're running their own businesses. They're doing this or that, having families. And I bet if you asked every one of them what's one thing you would change, they would say, I wish I wouldn't have, put all my eggs in one basket and just, it was do or die, because you should never think like that. And it's just like, it gets frustrating to see kids have to go through that at such a young age now. I mean, my sister just said the traveling team's roles now are, if you go on a family vacation, you're banned from the league for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, come on, guys. Like, you're robbing these kids of family vacations now. It's like, I mean, it's just ridiculous. So it's going to be tough. I mean, obviously, I don't expect my son to play baseball, but I mean, if he does, great. But I'm going to really struggle with that stuff if that's what's going to go on. I hope it starts trending towards how it used to be, but I mean, I'm only seeing it go the wrong way. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if anything, man, I mean, it seems like you're skewing it definitely towards the right way, man. I mean, like you said, you got a wife, you got a son, you didn't let it be obsessed.
Right.
I mean, a lot of that stuff, I mean, you're on a much larger scale than I am, but like some of that stuff like translates. Like I grew up wanting to do this, like I grew up watching Primos videos, and so
Right.
and that's I know guys that friends and stuff that got obsessed with wanting to do this kind of stuff, but it's not like, no, you're saying it's not like that's your identity. You still, I mean,
Right.
there's your job, and then there's your family and your life and your hobbies. Like for you, it's hunting, even though you don't get to do it as much as you would like to, but there's a balance there.
I just live vicariously through all of you guys. But yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the biggest pieces of advice I got when I first got drafted was to find a hobby and to find something to get your mind off of baseball. And I took that to heart big time. I mean, I obviously still had an obsession with hunting, but that's kind of where the whole off-season outdoors thing came from.
Yeah.
I started that with my buddy who passed on the UTV accident a few years ago, and we weren't too sure what we wanted to do with it, but that was like my escape from baseball.
Yeah.
I always thought I didn't want to look at hunting stuff, fishing stuff, outdoor stuff during the baseball season because it would distract me. Whenever I had a rough game or wasn't performing like I wanted to, I would resort to that, and it would make me not want to play baseball. So, and then I talked to one of our team psychologists one day, just BS, and he goes, no, like you want to look at that stuff all day long, anytime you get, because that's going to be your relief. That's going to be, something that you can turn to as comfort. And I took that in full stride. So that's where kind of off-season outdoors came from. And I was able to use that Instagram platform to, connect with people. And obviously, I mean, it's led me here to talking hunting with you, which is awesome. I mean, I'm still mid-season, and I'm here in Houston about to play the Astros, bullshitting about hunting, fishing, and in the outdoors, which is something that I love to do. And it's been a really cool ride. And hopefully, when baseball's over, I can somehow get into the industry. And I mean, the industry is just amazing. I went to ATA a few years ago, and like I tell everybody, it's like one big family. It's awesome to meet the people and how genuine everybody is. I mean, that podcast you did with T-Bone was awesome. I mean, you can everybody you talk to, you just hear like the genuine love and passion they have for, conservation and the outdoors and just promoting the sport. And that's just something that you don't see with a lot of other sports, which is really cool. I mean, even hearing about how they combat anti-hunters and everything. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool to hear. I think it was Jim said, he's like, but you never see hunters, bashing anti-hunter. And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that before.
You
right?
don't, yeah.
And obviously, I'm relating to you guys on the anti-hunter thing, where those guys now have a platform to reach out to anybody and speak their mind without suffering maybe a punch to the chin. And I mean, we get it all day long. If you have one bad game, I mean, we have trolls messaging us, direct messaging us, letting us know how bad we are, how much we're hurting the team. And it's unbelievable to hear some of the things that people have the nerve to say these days behind their keyboard. Yeah. And I mean, it's exhausting. And I see why a lot of people why a lot of, people higher up in the industry or professional athletes get rid of Instagram and stuff, because they just get blasted for no reason. And I mean, I try to see both sides of the story. And I know you guys talk about, they're just not as informed, or they might not understand as much. But, it's one of those adversity things that I talk to you about. And it's just one of those things that you have to battle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely, like, I think a lot of it is like not being informed, but then at the same time, like, some of those people, I think probably the worst, the person I talk to that gets the most hate from anti-hunters is probably Hannah Barron.
Right, yeah.
I've had her on twice, I think, maybe more than that. I know I've had her on twice.
Unbelievable how fast she just built up her account. I mean, that was
awesome. Yeah.
I remember seeing her when she was maybe around 20 or 30,000, and her Southern twang voice and everything just always cracked me up. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, she is gonna explode.
Oh yeah,
man, it's crazy what she's come to. But
and she's great. She's about as genuine awesome as they can be. And but all of, like, just some of the stuff that gets said to her is like mind blowing. You know what I mean? Like, for the anti-hunter thing. So, I mean, that's something that
people are ruthless, man. I mean, I've heard people, tell certain, like, we tragically had one of our pitchers die this year, Tyler Skaggs, completely unexpected. I mean, it was a horrible experience, but I mean, we've had guys get messages saying, like, the wrong angel died. Horrible job. Like,
oh dear Lord,
dude, I'm telling you, man. Like, people are ruthless out there when it comes to these things. And I mean, it's one of our teammates actually. So I think I heard Hannah say she rarely responds to them, which most of us don't.
Yeah.
But the person who sent that comment, they actually responded and said, I just want to know, did that comment make you feel better? And the guy said, you know what? At the time, it did make me feel really good. Which, you're like, really, man? How does saying something like that make you feel better?
That's about as malicious as God.
Oh, malicious, right? But then he goes, but then I talked to some of my friends and I felt horrible about it. And I'm like, okay. So that tells you it's like they're watching the game, something doesn't go right, you strike out or you give up a home run, and they like immediately hop on social media instead of taking a few breaths and being like, okay, should I be saying something like this? And that's basically what social media is giving these guys. They're sitting on their couch watching the games. Everybody's supposed to hit a home run. Every pitcher's supposed to strike a guy out. And if neither one of those things, happen, it's like, okay, I'm going on social media, finding this guy, and I'm going to bash him right now. I mean, it's just, I guess it's just the way things are these days, if that's all people think. But, it's eye-opening to see some of the things, and just hearing what people say to some of the big names in the hunting industry is staggering. So,
You barking that back there? Yeah, man, no doubt. It does get, like I said, I get it on a small scale, but it like not even comparable compared to what Hannah gets. But this is one thing I like to lean towards too, is I try to not even, because for a while there, when it first, I talked to, I think it was a lot of it had to do with, I had a lot of guests on that dealt with that a lot. And so I found myself talking about it a lot. And then I was like, there's a lot more positive things going on rather than focus on these, these guys that are just throwing all this hate out there. I don't know what makes them want to do that, but
100%.
there's a lot better things that I can talk about, so I like I said, I do have to deal with it from time to time, and like I said, I'm sure you have to deal with that kind of stuff too on the stuff that you were talking about, but just don't let it bother me,
And I think Jim gave the best piece of advice, is to just combat it with, share the experience. Maybe don't take the big trophy head pick, that picture's great and everything, but maybe lead up to it, show the experience, show what you're doing, show the friendship, show the full experience instead of just the actual kill, which is a big part of it, right? I mean, we all want to harvest an animal and provide for our families and, be proud of our accomplishments, but just help people understand, it's not all about that. And I think the more of us that do that, it's going to help bring a little more awareness and understanding of what we do and why we love it so much.
For sure. I know there's no doubt about it, man. I think if more people would do that, like I said, T-Bone and I talked about it too. If you kind of would focus more on showing all parts of it, and honestly, you do a good job on it on your page. I honestly think so. But I think that's a part of skewing it more towards a positive light, and where you don't see as much of just the hateful comments.
100%.
Yeah, it's we have a lot better story to tell than those people give us credit for.
What for sure.
Primos Takeout has changed the way that we hunt, from minerals to feed to the seed that we plant our food plots with. It has been incredible. Head on over to primos.com now to check it out and receive free shipping on orders at $75 and more.
So I know you're the one always asking the questions, but I got to ask you how you got started, man. I mean, so what's your background? How'd you become to where you are? I mean, I was listening to a bunch of your podcasts, and I never heard that once. So,
yeah, man, I'm the interviewer, man. I'm the interviewer. No, man,
now I feel like Step Brothers when they're like, "I want to interview you."
Well, it all started when I had a peacock bass aquarium. So
this could be a useful exercise.
No, man, mine is like I said, I grew up here in Central Mississippi. And I tell people I grew up watching the Andy Griffith Show and Primos Truth videos, So
awesome.
my heroes growing up were Will Primos, Jimmy Primos, Brad Ferris, Troy Ruiz. Those are my guys, man. I like watching them hunt, And since they were local, I grew up probably 40 minutes from the Primos headquarters. But with that being said, I never stepped foot in there until I showed up to interview for a job. Just never happened. But no, I kind of did, growing up, and when I got to like high school, I had a bunch of buddies that we all liked filming each other's hunts on handy cams and stuff like that. And
it's funny how similar we all are.
Oh yeah. and we would always talk about, being on making doing the outdoor channel thing or something. We had these ideas of grandeur. And there was a person named Keith Polk. He's been on the Primos show twice it's a kind of story of it all coming full circle. But Keith was and is a really good hunter, right? And he was he got me started turkey hunting. Called in my first turkey, and I was 12 years old. And me and him were just incredibly tight ever since. And he would always help me and teach me hunting stuff and all that. And I was in junior college, and he called me, and I was still like, I was in college because I wanted to have some kind of a career. I wasn't really sure what that was yet, but I still had these hopes and dreams of the outdoor industry. And he said, "Have you ever heard of Midwest whitetail?" And quite honestly, I was like, "No, I don't know what that is." And he said, "Well, they have an internship program you should look into." And I was like, "All right, I'll do it." And they were a web-based show, and they were region specific. Midwest show, Northeast show, a West show, and they have pro staffers send in footage every week, that sort of thing. And everything about how it worked out for me to come on with Primos is all just, I can't credit to anything but just the Lord's timing. That's all it was. Because I applied for that job. I was the only person that applied for the internship position that had zero video experience, because I had none. I put on there I'd run a handy cam before, and but I did not know it. But that was the first year they were starting a Southeast regional show, and I was the only kid from the Southeast to apply.
Gotcha.
And it's funny now, because I actually just found out last year there's a guy named Jake Meyer that works at Mossy Oak, and he does a lot of their marketing. I found out too, after I'd been hired and I was up there, that they actually had picked someone to come work up there before me, but he pulled out. He couldn't take the job. And so I meet this Jake Meyer guy from Mossy Oak. We hit it off, become friends. We get to talking, and I tell him I did an internship at Midwest Whitetail. He was like, I almost did that internship. I got the spot, but then I told him I couldn't do it. He actually was the guy that they had picked before me.
Wow.
It was like one of those small world things. But anyhow, I moved up there to Iowa, lived up there for 6 months, and that's where I got my first training on running the camera and editing footage and all that. Left there, went back to Mississippi State for a few years, and Aaron Warburton, who worked for Midwest Whitetail at the time, put me in contact with Brad Ferris at Primos.
Gotcha.
And we had shot emails back and forth, but I was still in school, and they didn't really need anyone for work. And so it was just kind of I was like, maybe one day they'll need somebody, and it'll be after I graduate college. I didn't know. Well, I ran into Brad at a trade show one day in Mississippi. I happened to be walking by. I saw him. I said, "You know what? I should go introduce myself and say, hey, I'm the kid that's been emailing you for the last year saying I want a video for Primos,
Right.
And again, just the Lord's time. And little did I know it, but when I went and said, because I remember when I walked up to him and said, "Hey, Brad, I'm Lake Pickle." He recognized my name because I've got such a different name, but he acted like a lot more interested in me than I expected him to. I was just expecting to be like, "Hey, I'm Lake, maybe I can video one day." But I didn't know it, but they needed some guys like
right.
Quick. So that was on it was perfect time. That was on a Sunday. Wednesday, I just moved back up to Starkville because we had to start classes that Monday for my junior year of college.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting in our little house that me and my roommate had rented out. We were watching Primos on TV, if I remember correctly, and the phone rings, and Daniel, my roommate, he goes, "Who's calling you?" I said, "Brad Ferris." He said, "Bull, Brad Ferris ain't calling you." I held up my phone. He said, "You better answer that." So I answered the phone. He's like, "Hey, this is Brad." And we small talk for a minute. He was like, "Look, here's the deal. I know we just, met you on Sunday, but we need somebody to video. Can you be in New Mexico in 2 weeks?" I was like,
your eyes lit
yes.
up. Yeah,
yes, I can do that.
Man, that's so cool to hear. I'm so fascinated with. It just it's all about the opportunities and those windows of opportunities, and just seizing them.
Yeah.
That's so cool to hear, man. And then
Yeah.
so from there it just snowballed then.
Yeah, that's been when we leave on September, this will be my 6th elk season with Primos. So time's flown,
Because it's something you truly love and are passionate about.
Oh man, look, I couldn't it's work some days, I tell everybody, but I wouldn't trade this for anything. Would not.
No way, man. And honestly, I think I'm so interested in just hearing everybody's path, because obviously sports took over my life, and I've been on that roller coaster my whole life since I was 6 or 7 years old. But I mean, just hearing what you've gone through is something that I envisioned my other life to experience, and it's so cool. Like even like Travis T-Bone talking about how they all got started and how they only expected it to last a couple years, and now he said they're on year 9, 10, or 11. I forget. Like the Bone Collector, and it's just really cool to hear how things go about. You always see guys like, how do I get a job in the outdoor industry, and no one ever really knows until you guys and see how they started it, and it's just always a different path, a different route, and it's always interesting to hear. So that's why.
Man, there's no cut and clear pathway to get there. I don't
not
think.
At all, man.
It's
you got to be personable. You just got to be open to whatever. You can't be a hermit crab, like I call them, sitting in your basement and hoping things happen. If you love it that much and you truly have a passion for what you want to do, you got to go out and grab the bull by the horns. So
and a lot of it, man, like I said, obviously I put some work into it, and
sure, man.
But it's so much about just the Lord's timing, and then the people that supported me. I had a good family, and like Keith Paul. Yeah, I love this analogy because I feel like it applies a lot to me. You ever see it? If you see a turtle sitting on top of a fence post, he didn't get up there without some help. You know what I mean?
100%, man. Yeah, like a lot of people don't see the early years. I mean, even in my situation, nobody knows I was making $25 a day, playing 160 games a year, going to Arizona, living five or six guys in an unfurnished 2-bedroom place for 4 or 5 years before I got to the big leagues. I mean, people look at you and just say, "Oh yeah, you got drafted and went right to the big leagues." Like, no, man, like it was a true grind, and it was a wild experience. But I mean, same as you, man. I mean, you went through it. Everybody goes through it in the industries that they pick, and it's always there's always more to the story.
Man.
So
man, look, that internship. Like my mother tells this story all the time. Like that internship, there was 3 of us living in like a 2-bedroom house.
Right.
And
man.
we would kill a deer, right? We were hunting public land. We would kill a deer, and we would live off that deer for a month, 2 months. That was because we were poor interns, man.
Man. If I told you how many Applebee's half-off boneless wings I've eaten, you'd be sick. Or like 4 for $4s or dollar menu stuff. I mean, you are scrapping to just make it. And I mean, I have amazing parents, and they were able to support me in the off season, and that was a huge part of it. I mean, it seems like you had an amazing support staff too. So that's obviously something that I've learned, and I'll be there for my son and my future kids. And it's just it's something I'll always be grateful for, and I'm sure you are as well. So
absolutely, man. I couldn't. I'm not going to stand up here and say I did this without any help, because I absolutely did not. And that's part of what makes me as thankful for it as I am.
Yep, me too, man. I mean, so many amazing people that help, and you meet throughout the experience and down the road. So
for sure. So, man, look, before we hop off here, make sure to put out there like how people can find you on Instagram and all that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just on Off Season Outdoors. My name Kevan Smith. It's Kevan. I'm sure you can type that in. I think I have it linked to it, but I don't really know what it is. It's just something. My buddy that passed a few years ago, he pitched in the big leagues, and him and I just had a true, passion for the outdoors. And he always thought off-season outdoors would be a cool name to start something up. Obviously we were filming our hunts and doing that whole gig, but it's kind of tough when you have a full baseball schedule. So
Yeah.
Just kind of treating it as a platform to talk about things, meet wonderful people like yourself, share my experiences and what I do, and just link professional athletes to hunting and fishing in the outdoors, and show people that we do the same thing. I mean, like I talked about Mike Trout, the best baseball player to live. The dude, has a place in Iowa. He's going to shoot giants this year. He has a place in Jersey where he's from. He loves hunting. He just got into it recently, but it's just awesome to see, how many guys in sports are into hunting, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, which is pretty cool, and it's going to help for our youth. That's obviously a whole nother topic on itself, but that's a big goal of mine, is to show these young kids, that a lot of us do this in the off season. We love it. It's a great experience to get out there and get exercise, which is what you don't see very much these days. I mean, I think Rennell is doing a great job of, telling the story and, helping people understand and helping kids understand what hunting's about. And I just hope to see more kids in the woods, the more I keep hunting. That's just one of those things that I feel like I saw when I was a kid. But it's a rare thing to see now when I'm walking through public lands, or I see a big truck full of hunters go by and I don't see any young kids in there, and it's kind of alarming, So the more we can appeal to that younger generation and help them understand what it's all about, and that it's not just about killing, I think we're gonna benefit in the long run, and that's one of my biggest goals. So so I know I went on a tangent there, but it's just off-season outdoors. Something cool to look up and follow and see what I do. And
For sure.
Don't be scared to reach out if anybody wants to talk about anything. I'm open to discussing things if you're looking for advice or anything like that. So I'm here for anyone that needs it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. You're a good dude. This is a fun conversation, man. I've enjoyed this.
I think I probably enjoyed it more than you, man. I love any time I can get away and talk about the outdoors, and that's just something I love about the off season. It's liberating for me. It's just something that I can use as a getaway. I mean, we show up at the field at 1 p.m. and we don't get out till 11 or 12. So baseball is just mentally exhausting. So it's nice to have an outlet and a release to tell stories and just BS. I mean, that's what it's all about. So
yeah. Well, don't worry, man. I can help you out with that part. I will blow your phone up during elk season.
Hey, I'll be eagerly waiting to see the shenanigans you guys get into here come September. So
There'll be plenty, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I bet it. But I certainly appreciate you having me on, man. It was
Absolutely, man.
It was a good time chatting and just seeing how much how different our career paths are, but how similar they are, which is pretty cool to see.
Absolutely. Well, for sure, man. And if we sat here, I'm sure we could find like plenty other things to talk about. But all that means is I'll have to have you back on sometime.
That's right. I'll be full game for it. So you just let me know.
Gotcha. Well, man, look, I appreciate it, guys. I hope y'all appreciated it and enjoyed it as much as I did. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in to the Facebook or the Instagram page. And yeah, we're done. Thank you for listening to the Speak the Language podcast. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Lake. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.